Welcome to this Sunday afternoon Sutta study program with the Dhammadharini and here in California. We are continuing our reflection on dependent origination in honor of our teacher, the Buddha, and his awakening, and the contemplation that the Buddha gave directly upon his awakening. There you go. I want somebody to move a few inches. Ananaya came to us in person this afternoon, so I'm happy to be able to see you. Can you hear okay? Yeah, you can hear? Okay. I read a lot of articles and books over the past couple of weeks, getting a bit of a sample of what the different scholars have said about dependent origination. And oh my goodness, oh my gosh, what a tremendous amount of verbiage has been spent on this subject. But there is one article that I'm going to recommend to you, which is head and shoulders above all the rest and has been endorsed by Bhikkhu Bodhi as giving a very clear outline of dependent origination. This is an article by Ajahn Brahm. It's called Ajahn Brahm, Dependent Origination, written in 2002. If you Google it, you can very easily find it. In particular, I highlighted this one sentence, which is an example of how he cuts through the chaff. Ajahn Brahm, apparently, in 2002, he was much more focused on a scholarly approach. And then as time goes by, one doesn't need to be that much focused on the scholarship, and it's more like a heart teaching. But this article is it's not overly complicated, but it's authoritative. But it does speak to the scholarship. Ajahn Brahm writes that dependent origination presents two different sequences of causation that generate rebirth. The first one is a delusion, or avidya, plus kamma, or sankharas, formations, leads to vijnana, which he explains as the stream of consciousness beginning with rebirth. And then with that vijnana, almost at the same moment, comes together with that, the nama rupa and the six sense bases, and then we're off to the races with that stream of causation. That's the first sequence. And then the second sequence that's sometimes seen is is that better? Is that better? Yes. Sometimes when the well, it's not better for you, but it's better for the people in cyberspace. We need to constantly be checking the battery on this microphone, because the battery can or close to halfway, and then it starts to be less loud. Okay, so the other sequence starts with craving, with tanha, and tanha plus what he calls fuel or upadana. That's the appropriation, leads to bhava, existence, and birth or rebirth into the next existence. So I just said that to set a bit of a little context. If anybody has a question as we're going along, if you put something in the chat or raise your hand, then I'll stop when I have come to a stopping point, and we can have discussion along the way. The sutta that I chose to read is the Sammādiṭṭhisutta, or the Sutta on Right View. This is number 9 in the Middle Length Discourses. So I heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove at Anathapindika's monastery. There, Sariputta addressed the mendicants. We know that Sariputta was famous for giving clear explanations. And in particular, this sutta seems to be very relevant to stream entry. And I read something in Bhante Sujata's notes that Sariputta was famous for getting people into stream entry. So that makes me love him all the more and make me think that anytime I come across a sutta that's spoken by Sariputta, that then I definitely think that's a good one to read and a good one to teach. Sariputta addressed the mendicants, Reverend mendicants, Reverend, they replied, and Sariputta said, Reverends, they speak of this thing called right view, Sammādiṭṭhi. How do you define a noble disciple who has right view, whose view is correct, who has experiential confidence in the teaching, and has come to the true teaching? This is almost one of the ways that they describe somebody who has stream entry, who's crossed over to the noble level. And they said, Reverend, we travel a long way to learn the meaning of this statement in the presence of Venerable Sariputta. May Venerable Sariputta please clarify the meaning. The mendicants will listen and remember it. Well then, Reverends, listen and apply your mind well. I will speak. And here's what he said. A noble disciple understands the unskillful and its root. The skillful and its root. So already we're talking about causation, aren't we? So the root is the cause that underlines or supports that which is skillful or unskillful. The unskillful or skillful are terms for the two flavors of karma, the types of action that a person will do, which leads to their suffering or the end of their suffering. What is the unskillful? What is its root? What is the skillful? What is its root? So you can see this is like a starting, like at the baby level or beginner level. Anybody can understand this, but it's also the best, isn't it, to put the teaching in the whole context, so you don't just take something sort of at the arhat level, or the how close to the things that happened a few seconds before arhatship, and start the teaching there without first setting the ground and setting the groundwork for this path of training. What is the unskillful? What is its root? Okay, so killing living creatures, stealing, sexual misconduct, speech that's false, divisive, harsh, or nonsensical, and covetousness, ill will, and wrong view. That's called the unskillful. This is also appears in other lists. It's called the 10 courses of unskillful action. And in a certain kind of a way, if a person wanted to go beyond the 5 precepts, but they were not dwelling in a monastery, it would be very challenging and really beneficial if this became the focus of their life as far as their ethical maturity. Killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct are the actions of the body. False speech, divisive speech, harsh speech, and nonsense are the actions of speech. And covetousness, ill will, and wrong view are the actions of the mind. Covetousness is called abhijja, is a strong form of greed, and ill will, or vyapada, is a strong form of hatred, and wrong view, micchaditthi, is a strong form of delusion. So greed, hatred, and delusion, when they're settled and habitual, or when they're intentional, are the unskillful acts of the mind. So it could be that just because of nature, for a second, a dislike, something happens and you have a sort of instinctive reaction of unpleasant, this is unpleasant to me. So that doesn't necessarily rise up to the level of ill will, which is settled, like if you sort of make a decision to dislike something, to be against something. That's unskillful. And the root of the unskillful is greed, hate, and delusion. What is the skillful? Avoiding killing living creatures, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Avoiding speech that's false, divisive, harsh, and nonsensical. And then you have non-covetousness, non-ill will, and right view. So what is not covetous, Bhante Sujato translate as contentment. So the greed is the state that makes you constantly dissatisfied with what you have at the moment, always jumping, wanting the mind to be restless and wanting to get something else different than what it has already. Contentment is able to be at ease and peaceful with what is at the moment. Goodwill, I think, is a very strong meaning. That's really loving kindness. It's not merely the absence of hatred, but it's acts of kindness. And then right view, and right view is going to be explained a little bit further down. And what is the root of the skillful? Mula, the kusala mula. He translates contentment, love, and understanding. This is something Bhante Sujato does that's a little bit controversial, using for non-hatred or for metta, he translated as love. And some translators think that that word love should be avoided because it's associated with romantic love, or it's easily to be misunderstood. But Bhante Sujato is trying to appropriate the highest, most noble, and the best of the best in our Western civilization of the meaning of love. Like if they say God is love, they don't mean to say God has a crush on you. They mean that God is the ultimate manifestation of metta. That it's the highest kind of goodness, and so he's trying to take that term back by using it in his translation. That's the root of the skillful. A noble disciple understands in this way the unskillful in its root, the skillful in its root. And now this is controversial. The sutta says they've completely given up the underlying tendency to greed, got rid of the underlying tendency to repulsion, and eradicated the underlying tendency to the view and conceit I am. They've given up ignorance, given rise to knowledge, and make an end to suffering in this very life. Does that sound like a stream enterer to you, or does it sound like something else? So this is are the qualities of a fully enlightened arahant. One who's given up the conceit I am, given up ignorance, given rise to knowledge, put it into avidya, and made it into suffering in this very life. That is the arahant. The commentators struggled with this paragraph because the sutta is talking about a stream winner, and then it's talking about an arahant. So, which is it? And Bhante Sujato helpfully points out that the version in the Chinese Agama or in any of the other versions does not have this sentence. So it could be that this sentence was added later on, and that this teaching is not only describing the fully enlightened arahant. It's somebody who's got the noble attainments. And then the next sentence, when they've done this, they're defined as a noble disciple who has right view, whose view is correct, who has experiential confidence in the teaching, and who has come to the true teaching. That's a stream winner. So you don't have to be an arahant to be a stream winner. Okay, so the mendicants approved and agreed with what he said. And then they said, Venerable, could there be another way to describe a noble disciple who has right view and so forth? And he says, there might. And this is a noble disciple who understands fuel, its origin is cessation, and the practice that leads to cessation. So the fuel, in this case, is not upadana. In this case, he's translated ahara as fuel. Elsewhere, you see ahara is usually translated as nutriment. And the teaching about nutriment, particularly starting with food, is very much the teaching that they give to the novices, to the beginners. If you read the sutta called the Novices' Questions, is anybody familiar with that one? What is one? Do you know the answer? Who knows the answer? What is one? No? What is one? All beings subsist on nutriment is the answer to the question, what is one? And then what is two is namarupa. What is three is, I think, three kinds of feeling and so forth. So it's a little catechism that was spoken by a 10-year-old arahant, and which is so that the ahara, so fuel, food is the fuel for the body. Contact is the fuel for the mind. Here, I'll bring up the notes. He doesn't give the list. Consciousness is the fuel for life. Take away these notes. So the process of life, the process of life that is going on and on to rebirth is fuel. So nutriment is another term for the root or the source of the causation. Anytime something arises in you which is on the downhill slide of the path that's leading you to go around and around on the same merry-go-round of life, that's going the opposite way, not towards liberation, but in the opposite direction. It's very helpful to try as quickly as you can be mindful to look back and see, where is this coming from? That's like it's a part of yoni samanasikara, is to have that ability to look back. Or if you see that the wholesome factors are arising for you, also can be useful for your training to do that, not wasting too much time on it, but look back and see if you can understand, oh, where's this coming from? Because if you know what the underlying support is for those conditions, then you can cultivate and develop the support for the wholesome factors, and you can prevent those things that are the or you can see through. You cannot be tricked by those things that are the fuel for the unwholesome. So when you understand the fuel, and then you look at it in terms of the Four Noble Truths, where did it come from? And then how does it cease? What's the practice that leads to its cessation? And this is the right view. This is the Sammādiṭṭhi throughout this whole sutta, is not that you learned a catechism, but you learned a method. You learned a method of looking at everything in your experience and all the dhammas that you came across that you're trying to understand. You look at them in terms of this method of the origin, cessation, and the thing itself, its origin, cessation, practice leading to cessation. And then, but then he goes on to explain it in more detail. This is typical of Sariputta. What is fuel? There are these four fuels that maintain sentient beings that have been born and help those that are about to be born. Solid food, whether solid or subtle, is the first one. That's feeding the body. Then contact is the second. Contact is phassa. So you have the stream of consciousness that's capable of cognizing or this cognizing a particular kind of sensory impact. You've got the sense faculties and the corresponding external object. The meaning of those three is contact. And then with the contact comes the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral Vedana. And then once again, we're off to the races with a Vedana. So the whole process that's going to Vedana to Tanha, it's launching with contact. So that's why contact is the second kind of fuel. There's another set of suttas. There's in the linked discourses in the 12s, and again in the linked discourses in the 35s. There's a sequence that gives the short dependent origination, and it starts with the triple conjunction and the contact is where it begins. It doesn't begin with the previous lifetime with avidya and sankara and so forth. It starts 4 steps in with the consciousness, the I consciousness, dependent on the I insights. The meaning of the three is contact. With contact is feeling, craving, and this is the origin of suffering. So that's that teaching. Then the mental intention, that's a chaitana, that's where your karma comes from. The deeds that you do intentionally are the ones that are creating the karma for your following rebirth. And then consciousness, cognition is the fourth. And in this case, it is the way that the mind that cognizes can lean towards its object and be reaching out as the consciousness is reaching out for its next object. And that process of reaching out for the contact is the way that vijnana can also, if it's not trained at the end of this life, can be reaching for the next life. Okay, so that's the fuel. Then where does fuel come from? In this list, fuel originates from craving, from tanha. Fuel ceases when craving ceases. The practice that leads to cessation is the Noble Eightfold Path. So you're not got all four parts. You got what is nutriment or fuel, what is its source, where does it cease, and what's the path to the cessation. Noble Eightfold Path, Sammādiṭṭhi, Samma Sankappo, Samma Vaca, Samma Kammanto, Samma Ajivo, Samma Vayamo, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. Right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right immersion. I'll tell you a story about my good luck, and then I'll call on Richard. And one time I went with Ayya Taloka to Thailand, and we got to go around and meet different bhikkhus. And, they have, the bhikkhu asked me what meditation practice I practiced. And the answer was supposed to be like anapanasati or buddho or some theme of meditation, being the theme that I practiced. But because of my training with Mataji, I said that my method was the Eightfold Path. And that monk was very happy to get that answer. He got this part saying, Sammādiṭṭhi, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vaca, Samma Kammanto, Samma Ajiva, Samma Vayamo, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. And, definitely it's, that's, is the way to meditation. Now, Buddha, yes, one meditating, well, we see in the sutras as meditating on the qualities of the Buddha, but one style of meditation is just using the name of the Buddha, like as a mantra, and just meditating Buddha, Buddha, like that. Richard, what can you tell us right now?
Thank you, Ayya. This question, it comes again in the next paragraph.
Mhm.
They've completely given up the underlying tendency to greed, etc.
Yes.
So it says a noble disciple understands in this way fuel, etc. It's the similar thing repeated. I think this has to be understood in the context of the beginning of each section. I'll go back to the first one. The wholesome and unwholesome. When friends, a noble disciple, I'm reading Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. When friends, a noble disciple understands the unwholesome and the root of the unwholesome, the wholesome and the root of the wholesome, in that way he is one of right view, whose view is straight, and who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So I think when this is being said here, they've completely given up, right? The underlying tendency to greed, got rid of the underlying tendency to repulsion. I think what it means is, and it may have been a corruption or something that came into the sutra at some time, right? That due to their confidence in the Dharma, their understanding that if they completely give up all these things, right, in this very life, they don't have to wait for a future life or something like that. It's possible in this very life that they can attain, the end of suffering. So I think there was probably a word or something that got dropped out probably over time somehow mistakenly, and then they just kept copying that same mistake. That's why it keeps saying kind of like the same thing over and over again, right? And because I think it's based on that idea that, and that's why I think Sariputta says it. He's arrived at, how's he put it again? Who has perfect confidence in the Dharma. He's arrived at that perfect confidence, and therefore he can see that if he does let go of these things, he will end suffering in this very life. Anyways, that's just my view, but thank you very much for listening.
I'm glad you mentioned in this very life. This is another of the very useful points that Ajahn Brahm brings out in the little booklet article that I recommended. The scholars and the later commentarial traditions got into a big debate over whether dependent origination is happening in a moment or whether it's happening over multiple lifetimes. And they really debate about that. But Ajahn Brahm's idea, and he points to some parallels, like in the usage of the language, is when the Buddha says that the Dhamma is visible here and now, he doesn't mean necessarily that it has to be visible instantaneous in one moment, but it means that within one lifetime, it can be known. So you don't like simultaneously experience birth, old age, sickness, and death, but over a period of time, within one lifetime, you have a chance to experience all of them. And if not consciously experiencing your own death you can observe others who are experiencing their deaths and inferentially know what death is about. So make an ending of suffering in this life. That's a miracle that we're able to have a practice that gives us this promise that it's possible. We don't have to go to heaven before we can understand. We can understand it here and now. Okay, I shall call on Damon.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a miracle, and I, it reminds me. Well, I'd like to hear your comment. Ajahn Sumedho, who is now still giving talks, even though he's in his 90s, and he often seems to say the same thing over and over again at this point in his life. But that one thing that he tends to repeat over and over and admonish the monks in Amravati Monastery is that a moment of mindfulness is a moment of liberation. Just a single moment. Of course, you could easily fall away from liberation by being unheedful, but I found that very encouraging, that even though I might not get a sort of big boom type of liberation, for each moment of mindfulness, I get rewarded with a moment of corresponding liberation. What do you think?
Yes. This is famously taught by Bhante Buddhadasa, that there's like a momentary nibbana, that just when you experience nibbana, it doesn't, in his view, says that you don't have to say that your work is complete. You don't have anything left to do, but you got a taste, or you got a view. You could see it, and that can happen before you come to the end of the line. Here's another metaphor. I got this one from Ajahn Thanissaro about what we're doing is this is about karma. So if you suppose that you go shopping and you've gotten all the things that you need to get, your cart is filled up, and then you get in line to pay. So you are not out of the store as of yet, but you've finished your shopping. You're not going to pick up any more items. The shopping is over. You just have to wait until you get to the checkout.
That's funny.
Okay.
All right. But could you just, I'm sorry, I might be missing the punchline. Can you just explain that real quickly? Forgive my dumbness.
Well, I guess picking up more items at the store would be like picking up more karma, like creating some new karma,
Okay.
which is leading to rebirth. But if you still have some karma left, which is the reason why you're still alive, this residual karma kind of gets played out in the remainder of time that an arhat has on this plane of existence, but they're not buying anymore.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So they ask for another way to describe a noble disciple who's come to the true teaching. And so the next one is, he understands dukkha, its suffering, its origin, cessation, and the practice leading to the cessation. And when they've done this, they're the noble disciple who's come to the true teaching. And now is going through the description of dukkha. Rebirth is suffering, old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, distress, associating with the disliked, separation from the liked, not getting what you wish. In brief, the five aggregates are connected to grasping, our dukkha, our suffering. This is called suffering. The origin of suffering is that craving which leads to future lives, mixed up with relishing and greed, taking pleasure wherever it lands. That is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for continued existence, and craving to end existence. And in case anybody had a doubt about it, this is showing how the teachings of the Buddha are intrinsically tied up with rebirth and are not really making sense, not making a lot of sense. You could maybe get part of it, but you can't really get the full gist of the teaching without the context of rebirth. Um, uh, the this relishing in greed, this nandi, raga, sahagata. So obviously one can experience things which are beautiful, but that relishing quality is it's almost like putting your willpower into it and investing yourself into it, making it your choice and your intention to enjoy the yumminess of that yummy, great experience. And then that raga, which is translated here as greed. I translate raga as passion, and it has to do with an inflammation. So raga is when your emotions come to be inflamed. So the Buddha, or the enlightened Arhat, still experiences everything that this world has to offer, but it doesn't experience the Nandi and the Raga connected to those. Okay. So that's the origin of suffering. Then the cessation is the fading away and cessation of that very same craving with nothing left over. So the tanha, asesa, nothing left over. Viraga, without passion. Nirodha, cessation. And then giving it away, chago, letting it go, patinisago, releasing it, muti, not clinging to it, analayo. It's very nice for beginners and lay people. Sometimes the monks talk to you about chaga, meaning generosity, saying very nice to, give some dana or to be generous is called chaga. But also that generosity is a factor of the end of suffering. So whatever you might have that you could own as your possession, whether it be your clothing or your coffee cup or your favorite brand or your opinion, just give it away. And that's setting the pattern for awakening. That's called the cessation of suffering. What's the practice that leads to this cessation? The Noble Eightfold Path. And so then the same refrain is given about the qualities they have when they've done that. Then the mendicants ask another question. Venerable Reverend, friend, might there be another way to describe a noble disciple who's come to the true teaching? Well, there might. And now he's coming into the proper sequence of dependent arising, starting with old age and working their way back down to ignorance. So they understand old age and death, their origin, cessation, the practice that leads to their cessation. And they define them. You see this elsewhere in like the Satya Vibhanga Sutta, the analysis of the truth. And you see it in the longer discourse of the Satipatthana. old age is meant to be taken literally. It's not just that this moment is, like I just looked over there and I saw Venerable Dhamavara, and so that view arose, and now I'm not looking there, and now it's going away. That's so my sight of Venerable Dhamavara got old, but that's not really what it means. It means actual literal old age. The decrepitude, broken teeth, gray hair, wrinkly skin, diminished vitality, failing faculties of the various sentient beings in the orders of sentient beings. That's old age. And what is death? Passing away, disintegrating, the demise, mortality, death, disease, breaking up the aggregates, laying to rest of the corpse, cutting off the life faculty of the various sentient beings in the various orders. That's called death. So old age and death originate from rebirth. Old age and death cease when rebirth ceases. The practice that leads to the cessation of old age and death is this Noble Eightfold Path. If you've already solved a problem about old age and death, and you're no longer scared of it, you're no longer worried about it, if you no longer feel traumatized, if you see somebody die in front of you, or if you get a diagnosis that you have your final illness, so there's no hope for you that you're going to die. If you don't feel any more trauma about that, congratulations. But for the great majority of people experiencing that that loss of death is anticipating death is one of the greatest problems that humans face. How much trouble humanity goes to try to work out a way to escape from old age and death. We can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on having medical treatments to extend our healthy lifespan. Or we could build a pyramid and have ourselves embalmed, and we could have hundreds of servants to be entombed with us inside the pyramid after our death to take care of us, with the idea that that's going to stop us from having to face the reality of old age and death. So when one doesn't know the answer about old age and death, then it's a huge problem indeed. But when we know the answer, it's not a problem anymore. Okay. So it arises from rebirth. And then another way to describe a disciple, the noble disciple understands rebirth, its origin, cessation, the practice that leads to cessation. And now he gives another bunch. He describes rebirth. What is rebirth? It's the inception, conception, what he calls reincarnation, abhinibbati. That's such an interesting word for birth. Abhinibbati. So in that case, the Pali verb nibbati is not vati. So the vata is the merry-go-round that goes around and around. So the nibbati is being on that merry-go-round, on that higher merry-go-round of going around into rebirth. So that's another synonym for jati. Taking on the khandhas, acquisition of the sense fields, other various sentient beings in their various orders. So that's what rebirth is. And where does it come from? It comes from bhava. Bhikkhu Sujato translate bhava as continued existence. Some translators translate it as becoming. I think Bhikkhu Bodhi translate as existence. So bhava is related to one of the Pali verbs that means to be or to exist. What I understand about this is that bhava in particular, becoming, doesn't just mean a very abstract sense of existence. It means being something. So if you get reborn in this kama realm, or if you get reborn in the Brahma realm, or you get reborn in the formless realm, you've got the bhava is the becoming that takes you to existence in some kind of a level or a location in the whole array of the different possibilities for existence. And whatever existence you got, then you get all of the capacities and the pluses and minuses of that particular type of birth. So if you're not inclining to any existence or non-existence, then rebirth would cease for you. And the practice leading cessation of rebirth is simply the Noble Eightfold Path. And then another way is to understand this bhava, this continued existence. What is its origin? What is its cessation? And the practice leading to the cessation. Now, it explains bhava as being in one of three states, either in the sense realm, in the realm of luminous form, and in the formless realm. The kama bhava, rupa bhava, that's sometimes translated as the fine material bhava, arupa bhava. So, ordinary person is living in the kama realm, filled with desire, reacting to those things that touch the senses. The person who's practicing jhana, especially the four jhanas, including the practice of metta at the jhana level of metta, they are inclining. That is the mind, the kind of mind that is going to this realm of luminous form. So you're going to the Brahma heavenly realm. And then if you're doing formless meditation and you've got a mind that's focused on infinite space, infinite consciousness, infinite nothingness, and so neither perception nor non-perception. In those formless states, a mind like that is a mind that's inclining towards bhava, becoming. So if you haven't given up a self, if you haven't given up the idea of the self, so you're doing these meditations, but you still have not let go, you're still not enlightened, you're still not quite aiming for enlightened, then you get to take that other state of existence. In a certain way, I've gained more appreciation for thinking about the four jhanas in terms of body, because the jhanas are secluded from thinking and secluded from unwholesome states of mind, but one can experience that the body and mind are pervaded with equanimity and bliss, so that bliss that can be experienced in the jhana state is definitely a bliss that touches the body. So in that way, it's different than the formless state. So that's the definition of bhava. And then where it comes from grasping, our upadana. Continued existence ceases when grasping ceases. I may pause for a minute after that for some conversation, because this is sort of picking up from where we got to last week. That upadana is not just a more stronger, more rigid form of craving. So it's like craving is an instability that's coming from a lack and dissatisfaction with what it is now, and reaching out for something different than what is now, or there's that instability involved with craving, but then the upadana has it's not just grasping, but it's like when you put something on, or it's sometimes called appropriation. So if I get something and I make it a part of me, a part of myself, and so this is where you get from your emotions and your wants and likes and dislikes into your view of the self, and this whole fabrication of the delusion of the self is really, to me, very strongly happening with that upadana, with that taking it on and putting it on. So one of my colleagues now is gotten a positive energy about signage, putting signs on the universe around the monastery. So they've made a lot of signs. So it's like, this is the meditation hall. This is room 1. This is room 2. This is room 3. These cushions are for lay people. These cushions are for residents. These cushions are for visitors. This is the toilet. Please flush the toilet. And so there's like a lot of signs being created. And I'm just joking, but it's like there's a certain way that one can take one's own name. You know, like if I was to get a name tag, say, this is Sobhana. Put a sign on myself, and I could say not just Sobhana. This is Sobhana Teri, and pretty soon it's going to be Sobhana Maha Teri. And I wish I could say, Sobhana Sotapana or Sobhana Anagami or something like that, and then put a sticker on it. So this is like it's what the upadana is, like what has the desire to set up a label and cling and identify with that, and so that then supports becoming that kind of person, or coming to live in that kind of a world. Let me pause for a second, see if there are any questions or comments so far. Okay, Rin.
I Thank you. Yeah, I as usual always appreciate, the teaching. And what came to my mind very strongly after what you said was the word illusion. I think the whole effort here is to realize that the cycle of independent origination is an illusion that we have because there's this hang on to the self. So it's tied in. Dependent origination and no self is really one. It's not like two different concepts. This is what I think. So, and therefore also the idea of bhava, even though it seems like, yeah, there's such thing, it's also an illusion, because when that is seen, then there's no more cycle of rebirth, because the illusions are gone. So I think it's really interesting, that it's like two sides of the same coin, right? It's like, oh, I want to be free, I want to get away, but because exactly this I that got in the way, this I that wants to be free is the problem. It's the cause of the illusion. So I found that really, really insightful, and I hope I understand it correctly. And I really just want to really appreciate and thank you.
Wow, I'm so happy to hear you, such words of wisdom coming from you.
Rare, yeah, it's rare. I remain curious because there's this I still here, right? And so I entertain myself. It's like, okay, when the illusions are gone, I wonder what that is. I mean, no, that's I to wonder about it, but what is it? Like the end of illusion. Yeah, I know, no rebirth. I get it, but what is it? What's the movement there, if any?
I guess I will say that it's a mistake to think of the Buddha's teachings being concerned about the nature of reality. That would be ontology. But instead, the Buddha's teachings are about what we experience. And so if somebody is swept up in illusion, they really, so this is like what is real and what is not real. They really experience something based on illusions. But because it's just an illusion, then when that flies away, then they don't have to experience that anymore. And so in this way, we choose the world that we're going to live in. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll call on Damon.
Yeah, I just wanted to get straight what Ren was, you and Ren were talking about, because it sounded like the truth of dependent origination is a truth. So in what way could that be diluted at the same time?
So the truth is that when there is delusion, then there will be the formation of karma, which will lead to the arising of consciousness in this world in a state of existence that will be subjected to all of the things that one is subjected to in this world, with all of the cause and effect and all of the reactivity that happens in this world of causation. So continuing to go around and around, subject to these painful cause and effect, subject to impermanence, subject to time, subject to being a prisoner of things that happened in the past, is all got the strength and power to keep us imprisoned as long as we're under that delusion or that illusion. But when the illusion breaks, then the entire house of cards flies apart and is not there anymore. And so from a state of non-delusion, you can still see the process about the cycle of rebirth and karma and how all that works. But from the state of non-delusion, you're also able to see cessation and the way to cessation.
Okay, thank you.
So a person who's caught up in illusion cannot see cessation. And they can't see the way out. But when they, yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Richard?
Thank you, Ayya. I think we have to be a little bit careful. I don't think Buddha really talks about illusion. He talks about delusion. Because delusion is you're producing it yourself, whereas illusion can be like a magician or something.
Mm.
And also, Buddha uses here in the sutra here in the beginning, unfortunately, the way things are translated, sometimes they don't repeat. I mean, they're there in the Pali, but they don't repeat it. He uses, he says, this is Bhikkhu Bodhi. He extirpates the underlying tendency to the viewing conceit, I am. Not I, but I am. So you're self-identifying with something that you're not, the five khandhas, the six senses, things like that. And that's the delusion. You're doing it to yourself due to a lack of knowledge. So you're having craving for the pleasure of those things. So you're thinking, oh, I must take birth. I must take birth as a man. I must take birth as a woman or whatever. I must do this. I must do that. You know, whatever your motivation is, right? Or I must go into the heavens, right? Oh, it'd be so wonderful. I could go up into the heavens, right? Or I could go to the formless realms. Oh, it'd be so wonderful if I could manifest myself in the formless realms like this. So these are all I am. You know, you're going to make yourself something, but you're doing it yourself. It's not a God or an outside force or something that's tricking you. You're doing it yourself because of, as he translates here, ignorance, but like I prefer to say, incomplete knowledge. So because you don't understand the way the universe is really working, right? And you're getting tricked by your own mind into thinking, oh, I want this pleasure, I want this thing, or like that. So if you use certain terms like illusion, it seems to be like as if something is outside of you tricking you, but it's not like that at all. Your own mind is tricking you into thinking that that's, you know, something that you want to participate in or something you want to do. It's like the example of from a distance or in the darkness, you see a rope and you think it's a snake. You know what I mean? But just because you think it's a snake doesn't make it a snake. It's still a rope, and you're the one who's thinking that. You're thinking that thought. It's not really any difference in the world whatsoever. The world is still the same way it is. The rope is still the rope, but you have thought in your own mind, you know, oh, it's a snake, you know, and therefore you've reacted, you know, to that in one way or another because you haven't gone close enough and observed it close enough and seen, you know, well, is it a snake? You know, no, it's just a rope, you know, like that. I don't know if that's clear, but
I think
anyway,
in the metaphor of about the five aggregates, they say that consciousness is like a magician's trick. So that would be an illusion. So if making that mistake about mistaking the rope for a snake, in a way, is we could say a delusion. But if there's a kind of like a choice, so I'm choosing to see snakes, we can be our own trickster and we can fool ourselves. And that could happen sometimes. That a person could fool themselves for you know, some reason because of the history or what they feel that is a necessity at some point. So I'm not going to completely rule out the idea what Ren, you know, experienced that moment of clarity, say, oh, it's an illusion. So good. So then we don't need to be tricked by an illusionist. we don't have to play tricks on ourselves anymore.
Well, the only point I'm trying to make is that it's not an external thing that's your problem. It's an internal thing. So if something external is tricking you, you don't have any control over that. You know what I mean? But the reason you can become enlightened and free yourself from suffering and attain nirvana is because it's totally up to you and your own mind. It's not an external force. It's not a God or some force that's got some control or something over you. Anyways, that's why I prefer to distinguish between the idea of delusion and illusion, because delusion points very clearly, oh yeah, I'm deluding myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas
Yes.
illusion could indicate something beyond your power is holding you, you know, in some way, shape, or form, or forcing you to do something, whatever. Anyways, that's my
Okay,
point.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
There's a question in the chat about the going back to the fuel or the ahara, the fuel arising from contact and the fuel from consciousness. And that gives you me a minute to put in a plug. I did this morning. Since I'm going to be away from Dhammadharini in the near future, there's this little tiny website that I made called tinyurl.com Sobhana Terry. So people can keep track of me and find my Dhamma talks if they're interested. If you scroll down that page, one of the playlists is the retreat that I gave about the 4 nutriments. So you may listen to my talks about the 4 nutriments in order to understand that better. It's a little bit of a stretch of a metaphor in some way. Then there's another question from Chintana about Maha. I don't understand the question. Maha means great or big.
Well, you had mentioned that they're adding that as your title.
Oh, yeah. In this this July will be the beginning of my 20th year as a bhikkhuni. And when a bhikkhuni or a bhikkhu has been through the rains retreat 20 times, then they can be called Maha, a big. And so if I live so long, at the end of this coming rains retreat in October, I can start to be a Maha.
I tried to look it up and it was make America healthy again. So that's why I had to ask in the chat.
Okay, well, just don't let it go to your head, Ayya.
You could say that I had lunch 3,650 times 2. So 7,000, almost more than 8,000, more than 7,000 times I've had lunch. And that's one way to think about it.
And Terry means what?
Terry means old. And a Terry is a bhikkhu or bhikkhuni who's had 10 vasas. So after 10 vasas, you're called Terry. After 20 vasas, you're called a Maha Terry.
Ah, thank you.
Okay, is there another way to understand the noble disciple? They understand this grasping, this upadana. What is this grasping? Its origin is cessation. The practice leads to cessation. There are 4 kinds of grasping. Grasping at sensual pleasures, grasping at views, grasping at precepts and observances, and grasping at the theories of a self. These kinds of grasping are quite similar to the 3 fetters. 3 out of the 10 fetters are the ones that you let go of with stream entry. So if you feel very uncomfortable, if you didn't get your usual, especially materialistic pleasure, or if you didn't get your usual entertainment or something like that, that's grasping at sensual pleasures. Grasping at precepts and observances. If you lived in an intentional community and they had certain rules and regulations, and then they changed the rule, and you were taken by surprise, so you didn't know that the rule has changed. And if you got all uptight and upset and disturbed because the rule was changed, then you could say you definitely have got a problem. You're grasping at precepts and observances. We see this in secular society as well. People get really uptight about what should be. If they are punishing themselves because they can never keep up to what they think they should do or how they should behave themselves, or if they're filled with hatred and irritation because others are not doing what they should do, that's grasping at precepts and observances. And then the theories of the self are also usually described in terms of the aggregates of form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and cognition, that if one identifies with that bundle or any part of that bundle and holds the view that they have the right to take their stance, this is the self, what they need to protect, then that's what grasping is. And where does grasping come from? Grasping originates from craving. Grasping ceases when craving ceases. And the practice that leads to cessation of grasping is simply this Noble Eightfold Path. Oh, did you notice something? Any step along the way of dependent origination is where you can become liberated. It's not that there's one point in that cycle that's the point at which you can break out. You can break out at any of these points, any of these hinges. So I know modern teachers often emphasize between feeling and craving, but one can break out at any point. So then there's another way they understand craving. What is craving? And now craving is described in terms of the 6 classes for sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and ideas. This is the tanha, the thirst. And now that it's sort of come over into this 6-fold formation, this will remind you of the other little sutta that I touched on for a minute earlier on in the Samyutta Nikaya, where it started with the 6 senses. So this teaching very much makes me feel that any time that I read in the suttas that begin with learning about the 6 senses, it's this is definitely about dukkha. It's about the fetter that arises from the 6 senses, or the suffering that arises from the 6 senses. So you've got your 6 senses, then you get the contact, then you've got the feeling, then you've got the craving. So that's the sense, what we inherit, the sense base, contact, feeling, craving. So that's a bundle right there. And that whole bundle can be investigated and tamed by training the mind about the 6 sense bases. Even if you would try objectively, like if you start to feel disturbed about something, if you just take a step back and say, okay, which sense base is involved? Is it because of hearing that I feel disturbed? Is it because of seeing? Is it because of smelling? And that's a way of like learning how to be objective about the whole process that's going on. It's about a way of like training our awareness to look at our experience in a much more objective way that doesn't get swept up in being carried along with the natural sequence. So craving is defined in terms of those 6. Where does it come from? It comes from feeling. Craving ceases when feeling ceases. And then the practice is the Noble Eightfold Path. And then we come to feeling. The Noble Disciple understands feeling, its origin, cessation, and the practice. And again, usually we hear about feeling in terms of 3, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. But in this version, they teach it in terms of 6. The feeling that's born from the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And then you could take 6 times 3 and get 18 kinds of feeling. And where does the feeling come from? It comes from contact. It ceases when contact ceases. So what is this contact? Contact through the sense bases. Where does it come from? It comes from the 6 sense fields. What's called a field is the ayatana. Sa means 6. Ayatana is a domain. And you may notice that by the time you get to perception, it's not any longer just with one of the 6 senses. Well, it could be that you just have perception of green or blue or something like that. But it's also true that the mano, the mind, assembles the data from multiple different sensations together. And so something that smells nice and tastes nice, at the same time, those different aspects are being unified into one experience. And if you even had if you had a cook who's like so considerate and artistic, and they presented the food that looked really nice, and it also smells nice and tastes nice, and even when you put in your mouth, and it's got a pleasant touching. So the touching and the tasting and the smelling and the seeing are all happening together, and the mind is putting those things together. But the Buddha is suggesting that it is helpful to disaggregate and to look at the different parts or aspects of the experience separately. And by disaggregating, it's a way of disengaging the gear. It's like if you put the car into neutral, the gears are disengaged and it will gradually come to a stop. But while the gears are engaged, as long as there's fuel, then it keeps on barreling down the highway. So then we have these 6 sense fields, and what is their origin? Their origin, those are the external things. Where do they originate from? Here it says it originates from name and form, which is called nama rupa. And this is going to be explained in a minute. Name and form is kind of a summary of an individual who's alive, who exists in some realm of existence. Name is sometimes called the mental factors, and the form is sometimes the material factors. But actually, for the human being, you experience the mental things you experience are connected to the meat, to the material body. So if you look at something, I'm looking at you, and my eyeballs have just changed their physical form in order to focus on you. And if I look past at the roses that are at the distance, my eyeballs are changing again to focus over there. And then there's something that's happening with the nerves that are, putting off their sparks or doing whatever that's going on there, and something else happening with Vedana, which is putting, certain kind of like chemicals into the body. And so it's all material. The material world is not just something that's apart from us, like some kind of a science experiment. It's actually what is the platform upon which the mind is connected. Even if you have out-of-body experiences, still, nevertheless, your mind is arising from the body. And then the mental factors that are described in the traditional list are feeling, perception, intention, contact, and the application of the mind, sometimes called attention, what you pay attention to. So those are different parts of what's going on with your mental side of your experience. And then the form are the 4 primary elements. The earth element or solidity, the water element, flow, the fire element, and the air element. Those are called form. So where does name and form come from? It comes from consciousness. So it's not just a science experiment in a book. This is our own experience. So we are experiencing feeling, perception, intention, contact, and application of mind or attention. We are experiencing them on the platform of the different changes that are happening in the material part of the body. And that experience is originating from consciousness. And this consciousness is the knowing ability which, especially in this sequence, in this context, is what's connected with being a living being in this world. Oh, I went over the time. So we understand consciousness. And I can rush through this because I already taught you about this last week. And so there are the 6 kinds of consciousness, the consciousness which is able to cognize through the 6 senses. And the consciousness came about because of the choices, the sankharas, everything that went before. We didn't know any better, and so we kept choosing And we made the choices that resulted in getting born and having the arising of this consciousness that took this body, that took this form. And all of it keeps refueling itself within the cloak of ignorance. When the ignorance is gone, this is gone, the whole process can stop. I think I'm going to have to stop here without completing this sutta, because I know that we've gone over our time, and I respect all of us enough to try to respect the time. Next week on June 1st, Venerable Marajina Bhikkhuni from Florida will be teaching the programs. And you might see me for a minute, but not much more than that. We're having the board of directors is having a retreat next weekend. So we'll be doing that. And then on June 8th, for those who are around who would like to come in person to the monastery here, between the morning meditation and the afternoon program, they're going to have a farewell luncheon to say goodbye to me. So those are the two events coming up. So I appreciate everybody's patient listening and your good participation. And I hope that you'll remember to read Ajahn Brahm's article about dependent origination, and to memorize this sutta and the different bullet points that are outlined in the sutta. And when you do that, you will have a very easy time when you read other suttas, because you say, oh, I can remember that one because I've seen it before. So let's close by giving respect to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivade Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, thank you everyone for your patient listening and for your practice.
Thank you, Ayya.
Bye, everyone.